All right, we are live, Smash Mouth Sports. I'm your host, as always, Preston Bailey. With me is Cam Vieira, and we are excited and honored to have Andrew Depaola for the Minnesota Vikings. Long snapper, tight end. It said about 15 other things. Did I get that right, Andrew? One of the best long snappers in the league. Is that true?
If you say so, I guess so.
If I say so, okay. So, I mean, I'm just curious, and we appreciate you coming on, taking the time. How, other than all the obvious, how do you gauge success as a long snapper? I mean, is it because from a fan's point of view, it's like when things go wrong, we don't always know. When things go right, we don't really hear much about it. So how do you kind of internally, or how does the team gauge the level of success as a long snapper and special teams player?
Well, first of all, guys, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And then, so I guess we as a team, we have like an internal grading system for a snapper, really, for me. It's going to be where ball placement for long snaps, where I hit the punter. And then obviously I have a blocking assignment after that. So whether or not I get my guy, and then kind of the same thing for short snaps minus the blocking assignment. So just imagine, the holder as like a target, and the closer you get to bullseye, the better score you're going to get.
Perfect. Now, do you ever try to get in your coach's ear? Because I know you played a little bit of tight end, but primarily you're a long snapper. Have you ever tried to knock on the coach's door? Coach, I see this opening. Can you get me in the tight end play? Can you get me in? Elbow Kurt a little bit. Kurt, can you get me in on this play or that play? Is that something you have a little bit of leeway with to try to catch a because they let the big guy. Sometimes lately, I've been seeing a lot of these 300-pounders catch a touchdown. My guy in Tampa here, Vita V. Caught it, is catching some passes. He's a big man. Did you ever meet Vita V?
No, I never did. I've seen him, but you're right. He is a large individual.
Yeah. I mean, I saw him the other day, and I was from my house and way in South Tampa, and he was at the stadium, and I could see him. I mean, he is a big he's a big man. So, but no, we appreciate you coming on,
mm-hmm.
and you got an interesting journey, and I was just reading about it. Now, you played baseball as well. Did you? Now, mm-hmm. I was just kind of curious. How do you get into long snapping? Because did you have a chance to be drafted by the big leagues in pro baseball? Is that something that you saw as a realistic opportunity, or just kind of football was kind of your path?
I mean, that's a great question. I guess I really didn't get that good in baseball until my senior year.
Okay.
And then at that point, if you're going to college to play football, it's pretty much already set by spring of your senior year. So I had a really great senior season playing baseball. And, the thought was always in my mind. It was my first love. But I just fell completely in love with football and really wanted to pursue that and see where it could take me. I'll be honest. I had, baseball. I always thought maybe I could go back to it if I needed to.
Okay.
But opportunity never presented itself, and here we are today.
So you're the Kyler Murray of long snappers. That should be the title of this, right? The Kyler Murray of long snappers. You can play baseball, basketball, football, you name it.
Calvin Johnson too, yeah.
Yeah. Now, so you've been in Minnesota this year. So you were in Tampa for 4 years. You were in Minnesota. I've got your bio here. You were in Carolina, Oakland, and Chicago. Do you have – when you're choosing a team, I mean, do you get into, how good the team is, the weather, the taxes? Do you worry about any of that stuff? Like have a preference if it's between two teams, or how do you kind of gauge where you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, all the factors you kind of brought up do play a role in making a decision. Now, I will say there's probably only like once in my career where I could actually choose between a couple teams, and that was that season that I signed with the Raiders.
Okay.
But I think when it comes down to it, players just want to have the best opportunity to play and showcase their skills and be respected as a player. So, at the time when I was talking to the Raiders, they really valued me as the best long snapper in the game at the time. And they, in talks, that was very evident. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sign with the Raiders just because you could feel the love and the respect and Gruden coming in, I just knew he was going to shake things up, and I'd heard he was a really good guy to play for, which he is.
Okay.
So all that stuff kind of, it goes into it.
So you liked Gruden because I'm always curious about Gruden because he's one of those few coaches that's really, I don't want to say polarizing, but he's got the Chucky. He's got a lot of excitement. As a player, how was it on a week to week? Did you love that energy, or by the end of the season were you like, oh man, I'm just coaching. This is just brutal out there. How would you rank him as far as all the coaches go, his personality wise and his game plan, his preparation?
So unfortunately, I never got a full season with him. I tore my ACL the first game that I played for him. So then I was rehabbing the rest of the year. But up until that point, it was just great because, he did bring this sort of energy that I guess as a player I had never experienced, as far as like challenging you. Like he would come up to you and be like, hey, my number was 48. Hey, 48, you gonna show me something? You gonna make a play today? And you're like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna show you something. Make sure you're watching. So yeah, it was fun to play for him. And, personally, the time that I had with him was positive.
Now, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but, you kind of, the curiosity, the coach, Gruden's like, kind of a challenging kind of a guy. The Doug Peterson situation, I get it. You don't want to comment on that. But when players are attacking the coach, from reports that I hear, have you ever witnessed a situation like that where players were so angry, so disgruntled, either out of the playoffs or the last game of the season or losing a playoff game, where the players just kind of revolted 3 or 4 against the coach? Have you seen anything like that?
Not personally, and actually, I haven't even heard about what's coming out in Philly. I don't.
Yeah,
actually don't even know what's happening.
Yeah,
there.
The reports that I heard was because of the benching of Jalen Hurts in the fourth quarter, 2 or 3 of the players kind of got aggressive, cursing at him, strong language, had to be held back. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. So now, Cam, I understand you had a couple questions regarding the exciting topic of COVID.
Well, I was just curious. Like, what was it like, dealing with all the protocols this year between the distancing in the locker room and the wearing masks around the facility and masks on the sideline? Was it how unique and how different was it? Obviously playing in front of no fans. Was it a challenge?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we tested every day. Sometimes twice, depending on the false positive or if the result didn't come back quite clear enough.
Was that with the nose swab from what I'm hearing?
Yeah, all nasal swabs, just around the rim. Wasn't terrible, but it was just irritating. And then, the toughest part was like not being able just to have that camaraderie, like in a locker room or like even in a meeting room with the guys. Like you couldn't just sit around and, shoot the proverbial, with the guys, because, you really had to keep your distance. And they really encouraged us to not hang out outside of the facility. So that was probably the toughest part, I would say, especially a guy like me coming in week 10, trying to get to know my teammates, and I can't really talk to them or hang out with them. So that was kind of tough.
Yeah. Now, obviously, they don't want you guys going out for lemon pepper wings, for lack of a better word. Del Mabry's got a lot of places near the stadium that sells lemon pepper wings, the Gentleman's Club, or the Wayne Haskins situation. But so you couldn't take your special teams guys, like 4 or 5 of you guys could not go to steak dinner. Did they take it to that level as far as what you were not allowed to do, or?
So we never got in that situation because Minnesota was shut down when I got there. The governor had ordered, no dining in, takeout only, things like that. My understanding is they didn't want you eating like dinner at someone's house. So I'm guessing if the state allowed you to eat dinner in a restaurant, maybe a couple guys could go out and have dinner together. But like I said, we never had that opportunity in Minnesota because we were in lockdown.
Oh man, lockdown in the snow. I mean, I'm not trying to paint a grim picture, but man, that's brutal. I mean, I'm down here in Tampa. He's in New England. Now, did you ever play? Now, I understand you went to Rutgers. Did you ever play? You played with Gruden. Did you ever bump into Bill Belichick? Were you ever coached by Bill Belichick at all?
I wasn't coached by Coach Belichick, but he did come to Rutgers and talk to us. I think one time stands out, maybe a handful of times I saw him in the locker room. And then his son played at Rutgers. His son was a little bit younger than me.
Yeah, his son Steve. Yep.
Yeah, Steve played lacrosse there, and then his 5th year he played football.
Right, because you played for Coach Schiano at Rutgers, right? And I know Coach Schiano and Belichick are close friends, so.
Correct, yes. Yep.
Now, your time was not with when Tampa was not when Greg Schiano was here, was it? Did you guys?
So Greg had signed me twice. He signed me in 12 and 13 and cut me both those times.
I don't mean to laugh. That's obviously it's a heartbreaking thing getting cut. I mean, just in the corporate world, if you get fired or cut or whatever, that's brutal. But so yeah, I mean, that's one of those situations where he hires you twice and then he cuts you twice. I mean, what can you do? He loves you, then he hates you, then he loves you. I mean, what do you do in those situations, right?
I mean, what can you do? They make the decision, they go with it, and so you got to pick yourself up and move on and do whatever you need to do to, I guess, find another team. So, I mean, it's a business, and I didn't take it personally.
That's great that you have that mentality. Now, I've always wondered, so like if you're not like say a top, second or third or fourth round pick, is there ever a point in the league after like maybe 3 or 4 years where you start to consider or at least have the thought, do I sell insurance? Do I go in the corporate world? Do I sell, cars? Like, is there a part of your mind that's like, man, if I don't make this team, because obviously if you make the league, I'm not going to get into your finances, but if you make the league, you're making great more than you're going to make anywhere else in the regular world. But is there a part of you that after 4 or 5 years that you start to kind of consider other options, or do you just have the mentality, I'm fighting to the death regardless?
I think that's a conversation that people have to have with themselves. And I think they have to have an honest conversation. You don't want to have your head in the clouds and say like, oh, it's someone else's fault that I'm not on a team. If I just keep going, the right person will find me. You really got to be honest with yourself and look in the mirror. And if you have what it takes, I'm sure there are scouts out there that are going to find you. But, that's just a conversation you got to have with yourself. And me personally doing the job that I do, long snapping, I can work somewhere else, make, income in another way while still being in shape and training to play in the NFL. Now, a receiver, a defensive back, a linebacker, I don't think they could do that. Their training's a little more strenuous than mine. But I'm in a fortunate position to where I could do that if I needed to.
Okay. Can you describe your training a little bit if you don't mind? Obviously, the receivers and those guys got to have that 4.3, 4.4 speed. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about your training, kind of how that's different from what you do versus what some of the other positions do?
Yeah. So I mean, just for long snapping, really, it's a bunch of weights. Obviously, you got to be big and strong. Take on some of these guys. You saw your guy Villa.
That is a beast, boy. I couldn't imagine blocking him. I would hold on every play and I would trip him and everything. Yeah.
Well,
hope you get away with it.
Yeah.
And then, there's a conditioning aspect. You got to make sure that you're in shape and you can, keep up out there. But then, as far as long snapping, you don't have to be as agile, as quick, like you say. Like my 4.3, I went to like a 4.5, So, okay, I lost 0.2 of a second on my 40. Not a big deal. That's a joke, by the way. I don't run a 4.5.
I was like, wow, 4.5. I was like, man, that is great. That is great.
Flip those numbers around.
5.4. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in that respect, I don't have to really put too much time into the speed and agility part. But, I do the speed ladder, footwork drills, because my footwork going backwards is pretty necessary and getting in proper position to block those guys, which, you've seen. They can be big, they can be fast, they come in all shapes and sizes.
Absolutely. One of the last questions that I just want to get into to two picks, and we appreciate your time, by the way. With the influx with this year with Sarah Fuller on special teams, she was special teams, co-special teams player of the week. My personal opinion is I definitely see an influx over the next 4 to 5 years of female kickers at least getting an opportunity in the NFL, just in my opinion, due to the climate being, I don't want to say softer, but just a softening up, if you will. Like before, in my opinion, I mean, it's fair to say you've probably never had a female teammate at all of the levels you've played. Is that fair to say?
That's true. Yep.
So how do you think going further, if there was a Sarah Fuller or the next Sarah Fuller comes along and she is elite, she is ready to go, do you feel that would mess up the chemistry or the dynamic of that situation? Like, how would you handle that? How do you feel the team would handle something like that?
I can't speak for a team because, you got 53 plus guys who are all different. But, I mean, personally, I don't see why I would have any gripe with the person being able to do their job. If she can do her job better than the next guy or girl, then she does the job. And me personally, like for field goals, 8 yards is 8 yards. The holder is 8 yards away from me. That's not going to change. So, I mean, it's not going to affect me at all. And if I'm being honest, she may even bring a different perspective to some of these conversations we're having in the locker room, in the meeting room. So, if that ever were to happen and I ever were to have a female teammate, I would welcome it. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, that's good. So you don't think the locker room specific, like obviously if she can do the job, I agree, but you don't think the locker room, obviously outside of COVID with the changing and all that, you don't think that would really come into play at all? You think they would just do a different situation for her altogether? If that came up, by the way.
You're talking about like having a separate locker room?
Yeah, whether it would be separate. Well, I mean, because I would, in my opinion, they probably wouldn't. Everybody wouldn't change together. I mean, she was part of the team, but they might separate it men versus women. Is that? I mean, maybe you're not thinking that far down. I'm just thinking of like the logistics of everything.
I mean, I would just think they would. Yeah, I don't know why you would put her in
with
the
the
locker
guys.
room.
Yeah,
right.
Makes sense. Cam, did you have any other questions before we got it? We got to ask him about the Bucks and Saints. We got before we got to let him go. But go ahead, Cam.
I just want to ask him quickly, did you play with the McCourty twins at Rutgers? And if you did, can you just give us insight? Like, because they seem like, great leaders, obviously, from the Patriots here. If you played with them, can you just give us insight what that was like?
Yeah, so me and the McCourtys were actually the same year. Jason played right away. Devin and I redshirted. And you're just talking about two of the best guys, I think. That
they seem like great leaders, yeah.
They're amazing guys. Just who they are as men, far outweighs how good they are at football.
I see why Coach Walter loves them. Yep.
Yeah. They always led by example. They were always first in line. They were always doing the right thing. I can't say enough good things about those guys. They are the true definition of what it means to be men and pros.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. We're not going to go through all the games, just in interest of time, but Bucks versus the Saints, the GOAT versus the GOAT. I got it. Obviously I'm rooting for Tampa. My Buccaneers got shelled both times by the Saints. But I've never bet against Tom Brady. I mean, do you have a vested interest, if friends, or one way or the other in that game, Bucks versus Saints, or?
I mean, I still know a bunch of guys on Tampa,
okay,
and guys within the organization. So I always want to see them do well.
Yes.
You never want to see your buddies do bad, but I think if I would give them the slight edge. I think there's just so many weapons on that team. I mean, who do you cover? Like it's just that they've got a ton of weapons. Their defense is clicking right now. I think they're going to be dangerous.
Definitely. Last thing, do you really do you follow the draft much in your role? Like, I mean, obviously, if a team drafts a long snapper and you're on the team, I mean, I would imagine you would just go buck wild and like want to smash your TV screen. Like, what is going on here? Like, I mean, it's only one long snapper per team. Am I right? Do I understand that correctly? Just one per team, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. I mean, at least that time. Yeah.
I don't follow the draft, and
okay,
if that were to happen, I guess it would depend on the organization. I would at least want a shot to compete. But if they, were saying, "Hey, this is our guy, this is who we're going with," then again, all right, what can I do at that point? Just time to move on and
definitely
see if there's another team that wants me.
Definitely. Well, Andrew, we really appreciate you giving us the time, and thanks again. We look forward to having you anytime, and good luck in the off season. Do you expect to return to Minnesota next year? Is that the plan as far as you see?
I'm currently under contract, so yeah, as far as I know.
That's perfect. Excellent. Sounds good. Well, that's the best way to do it. All right. Well, Andrew, thanks again. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks again. There we go. Like and subscribe to the channel. That was a great job from Andrew. So we really appreciate him getting everything going. So Cam, any thoughts on that?
No, I think it was great to have him on. Great to have a guest NFL player. Gave us some insight about what this year was like and what the future is going to hold. It's going to be great.
Yeah, we got all our questions in. He was a great guy. He's about 6'2". For those who don't know, he's 6'2". He's about 245 pounds. When he said he ran a 4.5 40, I thought, wow, that is amazing for a long snapper. But I didn't want to get too deep in the weeds with the Sarah Fuller thing. But he was a great guy, great sport. What I was getting at is, I agree with everything he's saying. If whoever it is, the next Sarah Fuller, if she could come in and nail 50 yarders, that's great. The only concern that I would have as not as a fan, as an organization, is the day-to-day logistics of the
Right.
locker room. Eventually, that in the short term, it might not be a problem, but eventually,
As time goes on.
as time goes along with the changing and so on and so forth, it could be a problem, or a problem could be presented, or if there's a joke which happens in the locker room which goes too far, I would like to see that. But no, he was a great sport. I thought it was great. What are your like and subscribe to the channel? Hit me at Smash TV Radio, Smash Mouth Sports. He also likes the Buccaneers, so we're going to come back to that. So stay tuned.